We are now currently at step number 10 in the directions for the Millville home design in your Millville workbook. We are ready to start the construction of the floor. And number 10 says, begin by using the square rectangle tool to draw the floor size of your house. Be sure to start at an intersection on the grid. And watch the show size palette to verify the correct dimension. If your house is 30 by 50, then you will begin with a rectangle that is 30 by 50. Okay, what that means is you're going to start with your square tool here, your square rectangle tool, and you see these intersections on the grid. You want to start somewhere where there's an intersection on this grid, such as right here. Okay, and if I hold my mouse button down there and I begin to go over to the right, you'll notice in the show size palette that the number starts to increase at 2-foot intervals. If you remember, we're on a 2-foot scale right now. That's why every time it clicks over once, it moves 2 feet to the right. Now I want to draw the floor of my house. And my house is 50 feet long. So I'm going to go all the way over until I see this number say 50. And then I'm going to go down until I see this number say 30. That rectangle is 30 feet by 50 feet in Millville. Now I'm going to let go of my mouse. Okay, now that's going to be the floor of my house. I'm going to go to my text tool, and I'm going to type in here, floor. Once that's done, you click on the selection tool and click off. The next thing that you're asked to do is to place a 2-foot foundation wall along each side of the house. This foundation will be 2 feet high by however long each side of the house is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my square rectangle tool. I'm going to start at the corner of this floor, and I'm going to make a long rectangle that is 2 feet high by the length of the wall. So this one's going to be 2 feet by 50 feet. And then let go of your mouse. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. 2 feet by 50 feet. I'm going to do the same thing on the two sides of the house. It's going to be 2 feet by 30 feet. And again, on this side, 2 feet by 30 feet. Very important that you understand that the foundation meets up with the same corner as the floor, so that when you end up folding these walls up, everything lines up with each other. The next thing you can do is to give those foundations somewhat of a concrete texture. If I select this with my selection tool and hold down the Shift key, I can then select multiple items at once. I can then point and click at all the foundations, go over to my texture palette here, and select something that resembles concrete. I personally like to use this one here. Okay. That takes us to step number 12 in your books. Step number 12 says once your foundations are in place, you can construct your walls on top of the foundations. Remember that the height is 10 feet per floor in Millville. That means that if you have a 2-story house, your walls are going to be 20 feet tall. If you have a ranch, then your walls are going to be 10 feet tall. So I have a 2-story house. So I'm going to start with my square rectangle tool. I'm going to start at the corner of this foundation and draw a rectangle that is 50 feet long by 20 feet tall. And I know it is because I can see it in my show size palette. I'm going to do the same thing down here off of this foundation. 20 feet down and 50 feet over. And let go. Notice the walls are sitting right on top of the foundation. I'm going to do the same thing on these walls now, only these are going to be 30 feet down and 20 feet out. And this one will also be 30 feet down and 20 feet out. There are the walls to my house. The next thing that it asks you to do is to construct the roof pitch. Now in order to do that, I'm going to need to move my toolbars out of the way so that I have space to do this. And if you look at step number 13, it says now you must construct your roof pitch. Select the 45-degree line tool and draw two lines from the long end of your house that will slightly cross over each other. So I'm going to go to my line tool and I need the 45-degree line. So I'm going to hold this down and select 45. Then on the long ends of my house, on these sides, I'm going to click on the very top corner here of the wall and extend a line at any given length, just so they're long enough to overlap each other. Here's the first one. Then I'm going to go to this corner and draw the other one so it just overlaps the first one, like that. Then I'm going to go to my selection tool, hold down the shift key, and select both lines. This one's already selected because it's got the black handles on each end. Now I'm going to select this one. Now that they're both selected, I can go to my accessory palette. It says to go to View, Palettes, Accessories. That's View, Palettes, Accessory. I'm going to select the scissors, and away they went. And I'm left with a 45-degree pitch for my roof. Now I also need to do that on the other end of the house. So I'm going to go back to my 45-degree line tool. I'm going to go to this corner, draw my first line, draw my second line, go to my selection tool, hold down the shift key, point, click, so that they're both selected, go to the scissors, and there you have it. Okay, at this point, we should be completed with step number 13 in your workbook. And it also, at this point, there's an illustration on the bottom of your workbook page that should resemble what you see on the screen. So you should have your floor, your foundation, your walls, and your two roof peaks. So at this time, you can go on to step 14 in the book. And we will notice that it says here now it's time to place your tabs on your home so that we can glue it together at a later time. See, the tabs provide you a surface in order to glue to so that the whole house gets held together and the seams all line up. The way we're going to do this is we're going to use a couple of tools. The first one being the square tool again. We're going to place tabs right along these long walls. And I usually like to go out about 6 feet with my tabs. It gives me a nice surface to glue onto. This long tab here that I just made there is going to be a long surface for the roof to be glued onto. I'm going to want to do the same thing to this one down here, the length of the wall. Now I'm going to be using a different tool called the polygon tool. This is a little more tricky. Here's how it works. You're going to start in the corner where the foundation meets the foundation, and you're going to click down with your mouse, and you're going to go out at a 45-degree angle, roughly 6 feet. It doesn't have to be exact because, like I said, this is just a surface to be glued onto. So I'm going to release my mouse when I get to that point. Now my mouse is attached to this point. I'm going to travel in the upward direction, and then I'm attached to this point. When I get right here to the top of the wall, not the top of the tab, but the top of the wall, I'm going to double click with my mouse. And by double clicking, I close that polygon. I make it one complete shape. And that is a tab that will be used to glue to this wall. That is why we only need one tab between two walls. This tab glues this wall to this wall. Therefore, I will need one between these two walls, one between these two, and one between these two. I will do that right now. Click, drag, release, up, click, and then double click to close it. Again down here. Click, drag, release, click, and to close it I will double click. Another one right here. Click, click, and double click. There are two more tabs that are needed, and they are for the peaks of this roof. I'm going to click on where the wall meets the roof peak. I'm going to click here, drag out, release. Go parallel to the peak, click, and then again to close it at the very peak of the roof, I'm going to double click. Out, release, travel up, click, and to close it at the peak, double click. I'm going to want to do the same thing over here on this side. And to close it, double click. Now, just so that I don't get confused, I'm going to go to my text tool, and inside each of these tabs, I'm going to actually type the word tab. And I can use my selection tool once the handles are around it and kind of use my arrows on my keyboard to nudge it around. I could also use a shortcut here which duplicates things, that is Control D. And by using Control D, I can duplicate something that's selected and then use my arrow keys on my keyboard in order to move it around to where I want it. That way you only have to type the word tab once, then you can simply duplicate it by using Control D and placing the word tab in each of the other tabs. I also want to use the text tool to place my name on the floor. And at that point, you should now, again, save your work. So I'm going to go to File, Save As, Tarja House. I'm just going to click right in here, right after House, and type a 1 after it, because that's the next number in line. The first one had no number. The next save has a 1, and the next one will have 2, and so on and so on. Save. Notice it changed up here to Tarja House 1. This is now saved, and that's it for this portion.